everybody. Um, well, I'm really happy to be here. And this was impermanence, right? We're starting with impermanence. Is that right?
Actually, we're gonna start with life,
Precious life. Okay, good. Precious
precious
life.
life.
Good. That's what I had that line here. I forgot if we skipped it or not, but it's actually quite important. Well, I want to begin with a preliminary that it's always I'm still a little bit exploring what's the best way to I'd like to put the word teach in quotes to FPMT centers because I really consider all of you my Dharma brothers and sisters, and that we're along this path side by side, and that some of the people listening may be more advanced than I am in your level of realization and understanding. So if you read the book, I call myself a teaching assistant. That's the title I like, is a Dharma teaching assistant. So I really appreciate it. It means a lot that you're here, and I'll try to make it worthwhile. I think the one thing is I do try to make your time worthwhile and entertaining, at least. So I really appreciate you showing up, and for those of people listening and recording, for listening and recording. But yeah, the reason so this is the book, How to Train a Happy Mind. And so Lars invited me to come and do a couple of talks. So I'm going to do, what is it? Four, three, two, three, four talks, something. I forget how many.
Yeah, this first on life, and next will be on impermanence, and then August and September, two more after the
Four.
summer break.
Okay, yeah. So four topics. I forget which ones they were, but yeah, precious life impermanence to start. And someone I teach in the center nearby. I teach at the Kyoto Foundation, and there's a young woman who's a Berkeley student who came by who's studying Buddhism academically, and she's been now having more of the experience of studying Buddhism at a Buddhist center and meditating. So after the class, she came up to me and she said, "Oh, do you get anything out of these meditations? Since you're leading the meditation, when you lead the meditation, do you get anything out of them?" And I said to her, meditation isn't something to know, it's something to do. So it's kind of like saying, do you get anything out of doing your workout? Like, of course, it's always a benefit. So that's at least reassuring for those of you who are very experienced people in the FPMT, because I do feel like the FPMT is just filled with riches, like extraordinary, highly qualified teachers. And the reason I wrote this book, and in general, most of my teaching, is for the audience of people who aren't Buddhists or have a hard time with Buddhist worldview. Ideas like um, karma, rebirth, other realms, things are pretty intrinsic to understanding Buddhism the way we learn it, but that most people in our culture don't believe and probably won't believe during their lifetime. There's no scientific evidence for it. So for people who are quite reasonably looking for scientific evidence for things, how they can still practice as authentically as possible analytical meditation. So anyway, I appreciate you here, and I tried to make it worthwhile. One thing I say for these FPMT sessions is that um, there's a lot of nagging questions, I think, that we as Westerners often have with the Dharma. And we can hear the continuity of consciousness is a good one. That actually in this precious life topic, they usually teach the continuity of consciousness, right? That they one of the meditations you do is to go backwards day by day, and then step back into your mother's womb, and then go like day by day by day, and then all of a sudden, no, there's the moment of conception, and then step beyond that and just think, oh, what was I before that? It's a really powerful meditation, but it does go kind of beyond our level of understanding, like scientifically. And so there's a logical argument for why you've always existed, this continuity of consciousness, which is that the cause of a moment of consciousness is the prior moment of consciousnness, right? I think everybody knows that and has heard that debate. But when you lay it down and hear it the way it's taught, it sounds like it's to fit, like, okay, case closed. The cause of a moment of consciousness is the prior one. So at that moment, when the sperm met the egg and then consciousness entered, the only possible cause for consciousness is another moment of consciousness. So it had to be. So that's the argument. Raise your hand if you were fully convinced by that argument when you heard it. Oh, good. One person. Oh, really? A couple people. Good. I wasn't fully convinced. I do believe it. I do believe it now, but I don't find it logically convincing. I don't think it's an absolute like slam dunk. There are other arguments, and I do agree with, I am a authentic practicing Buddhist, and I believe not only that, but a lot more of the far out things we all believe as Vajrayana Buddhists, but it's taken a couple decades. But I don't think it's a slam dunk logically when you try to convince somebody of that. Okay, take a friend who's not a Buddhist and try to make that argument to them, and it doesn't really land, because there's other options. Like, one is that matter causes mind. Some scientists believe that. Another is kind of more subtle, which a lot of scientists believe today, is that matter and mind are kind of that neither exists, actually, that there's something in between, that the way everything exists is actually something else, that like matter and mind are very strong dualities, right? So just that alone should tell you that there's something really wrong with those two ideas, because it's very dualistic thinking. So like Carlo Rovelli talks about that neither's true, that it's more like there's information, like information is at the fundamental basis of reality, and that mind is one way it appears and matter is one way it appears, but really it's all like a continuity of information. So if you start digging into this question, it's not a total slam dunk that the mind's immaterial, and it continues. It's quite, I don't think logically it holds, even though like we all might be convinced of it. From a lot of us get convinced of it through direct experience. When you do Mahamudra meditation, you meditate on the mind, then you feel like, oh, there really is something there. That's how you become convinced. But anyway, I only bring this up because that's what I found. A lot of practicing Buddhists, FPMT people also enjoy these classes, even though they were kind of designed for beginners, because we openly ask those questions and address them and think about how we could practice even if we're not fully convinced, like how we can still practice this path of the Lam Rim if we do have some doubts about, say, whether consciousness is immaterial, whether there's past and future lives, and so on. The Buddha himself said to doubt everything he said and test it like you would test gold. So I found when I test it, it doesn't quite stand up to like the modern logic, and that the way that I've become convinced of many of these ideas is more through direct experience in meditation, where you have some very powerful experiences that convince you these ideas are true, and the authority of our teachers. Because why would His Holiness be lying? Why would Venerable Rene be lying? And so many, it doesn't make sense that our teachers would be making this stuff up, and they're so highly realized. But those are the only two ways I really feel like I gain conviction of some of these ideas whose logic I don't think stands up to like contemporary standards of like logical argument. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Precious Life today. This is the book, How to Train a Happy Mind. And I was really happy that because His Holiness the Dalai Lama wrote a foreword to the book, which was totally shocked me. And it also helped assure me that I didn't make any huge mistakes in the book. I had about 20 great readers read the book, including toward the end, like Venerable Sangye Kadro read a very late copy of the book, and Venerable Droma, formerly Fabienne Pradel, read a version, and also young people unfamiliar with Buddhism. I had a lot of people read the book and give feedback that helped me make it understandable, and also comb through some errors or things that were unclear. But at the very end, at the last minute, my editor had sent the book to His Holiness's office to see if he would write a foreword, which is kind of a long shot. And we didn't hear back anything for 6 months. So it was kind of like we got ghosted by the Dalai Lama. But then right before publication, 2 days before we were going to go to press, we got an email back from His Holiness's translator who said, we think the book's beneficial, read the whole thing. His Holiness wants to write it forward, and we have a few corrections for you. So we got those corrections, but it's something that I'm so grateful for that the introduction is in here, because it assures me, and I think it also assures other, especially people like, FPMT practicing Buddhists, that if His Holiness, recommends the book, that it doesn't have any gross like misunderstandings about Buddhism within it, or because that's the thing you need to worry about, is sort of polluting the Dharma if you go too far. So I tried to toe that edge, and luckily my teachers agreed that it managed to toe that edge. Venerable Renee also looked at Venerable Renee's kind of very busy and always, but he did look over the book a little bit too, and he said, "Oh yeah, it looks like it's consistent with Dharma," which is good. Okay, so we're going to talk about precious life. I did want to talk a little bit just about what meditation is. I think it's the very, very, very first topic we often go into, but it's kind of nice to remind yourself. I end up going over this almost every week, because I'll ask people at the center where I teach, is anyone new to Buddhism here or to meditation? There's always somebody. So what I like to talk about is that meditation has become is everyone here kind of an experienced Buddhist too, or some people new? Yeah, I think people are more experienced. That's what happened. So meditation's become popular as a kind of therapy, to help you sleep better, reduce stress, increase concentration, which is okay. But it's kind of becomes like a consumer activity. I was on a call. A book club invited me to come and speak to them. It was their book of the month, and it was a book club full of realtors, 600 realtors, who wanted me to give the book to them, which was great. And so I was on the call today, and there was a lot of them were there. About 250 people were on the call. And one of the questions a person asked was, "Oh, I'm used to thinking of meditation as something selfish, something that's for me to make me feel better, to concentrate better." So I thought, yeah, that's really it, because I say that in the book, and I kind of notice it culturally, but it was kind of confirming to have someone just say that flat out, that I'm used to thinking of it that way. So that's why one of the first things I ever say about meditation, and even for those of you, all of you experienced people, it's kind of nice to remember that for a Buddhist, the purpose of meditation is to bring out our best qualities. It's a nice, simple way of saying, we would say meditation is concentrating on virtue. Like there's a lot of traditional language, we use, but to say it in the simpler terms, I think is very nice. If you ever have a friend who asks you what's meditation, I think this is an even simpler way to say it's a way to bring out your best qualities. Like, what are those qualities? Openness, compassion, kindness, generosity, patience, gratitude, joy, right? That's what it is. Concentrating on virtue is it gets a little vague. Like, what's virtue? What's virtue exactly? Like, what is that? What does that mean, right? But to say bring out your best qualities, I think everybody understands that. And then the next thing, these first two things really blow people's mind when I tell them, and I keep getting the chance. Now it's every couple of days to tell people these ideas, so it's a real privilege. So the next thing I often tell people is, how do you know you're successful in meditation? Actually, why don't I ask people here? Does anybody want to say, how do you know whether your meditation is successful? What do you think? Anybody? You don't have to say anything. I can tell you things that some people say sometimes.
I can
When
start out.
you
Oh, yep.
no,
Cyril,
go ahead,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
All right. I realized after 10, 15 years of meditating, I'm able to detect my emotions quite early on before they sort of hijack my attitude, my mood, my energy. I can see easily, oh, I realized there was this imprint of something that could potentially become anger, but doesn't sort of ripen. I
Yeah.
just noticed it much more early. So very nice for me, actually.
That's great. So that like non-reactivity, mindfulness, like stopping. They say, there's these 5 mental factors, and what you described is like, they say the only place you can stop it is at feeling, the 5 omnipresent month, and that's what you're describing. You have the feeling, and then you just like let it pass by. What were you gonna say, CB?
I was going to say something similar, that it's when I can abide in a state of kind of um, non non-duality, non-thoughts, non-feeling, just abide in a kind of a in a kind of a pure state of awareness where things stop to come up.
Yeah, yeah, that's very nice. So that experience more of,
And to hold on and continue
yeah,
to continue for a while.
yeah. So to touch that subtler aspect of mind and to stay
Yeah.
with it. Yeah, it's very nice. I think probably all of us have had that experience. Anybody else want to say what? How do you tell meditation's getting better?
For me,
Success.
it was kind of funny because I am still quite nervous, but I started to notice when other people are like getting angry and there will be some quarrels. So, um, like somebody is, um, somebody will be very angry soon,
Mm.
and I see that something is building up. It's for other people, not for myself so much, but I see when somebody is going to make a big quarrel.
Oh, and you're able to like avoid it or just
Sometimes, yeah, because I can see that somebody is building this whole thing, and perhaps I can shift the whole thing a bit because there is some tension in the air. I would say like that.
anybody else? See, they're all good answers. Okay, well, some people would say your ability to concentrate, some people say, I can focus for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Um, so I'll tell you, and I actually only recently heard this a few years ago, but it was through Venerable Sangye Kadra. I'm so grateful to these direct students of Lama Yeshe. I've been found so, so powerful, like Venerable Sangye Kadra, Venerable Rene, Venerable Rubina, and others, Rob Priest. So I asked Venerable Sangye Kadra this, what's the measure of meditation success? And she said, your relationships get better. And she said, in fact, one of her corrections when she read the book is because I quoted her in here and said that. And she said, oh, that's not me. That's Lama Yeshe. She said, I got that from Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe told me that. And I just love that answer. I think it's so powerful in so many ways. Because on the one hand, um, it takes you out of that, the selfishness of meditation. And I speak from my own experience. I could have all those things you all described. I've had them too, and then come downstairs and get in a argument with my wife right after. So I think it's such a good check on your practice. It really added a much higher bar to my own practice. It's like, oh, if I'm not getting along with my wife, then it's do I really have a powerful meditation practice or not? Have any of you ever come to your teacher with a cool vision? Like you had a cool experience in meditation, like saw some lights or like heard Tara's voice or something, something have any of you ever like gone to your teacher and shared like a cool experience? Well, I haven't. Some of my friends have. And always, always, when it comes to I think it's kind of early in your path, you tend to do this like, whoa, I had a cool experience in meditation. When I brought that to Renee and other friends brought that to their teachers. Every time the teachers said, okay, how's your relationship with your partner? How's your, how's your craving? How's your relationships at work? So Ben Renee would always say that to me. It's like, like keep practicing. He's like, it's nice that you had that experience, but what's the result? What's the result in your life? So I like that very much. I find these two things I actually find even for longtime Buddhists are quite um, surprising ways of rephrasing what we know already, that the purpose of meditation is to bring out our best qualities, and that the measure of meditation success is that your relationships get better. I'd say a couple more things about that, but well, I'll tell you the other surprises about meditation. I like to say for people, which are good reminders for us. A lot of people get surprised when I tell them meditation isn't relaxing. And they're like, really? And so what I'll say is, well, it's true that your meditation is a lot more effective if you're relaxed. In general, you really do need to be able to be relaxed to meditate well. And there are times when meditation can be relaxing. But here's the test, is start to compare meditation with the variety of other relaxing activities in your life and see where it ranks. So having a nice walk out in nature or around your neighborhood, watching TV, having a drink, watching Netflix or whatever it is you like to watch on TV, YouTube, whatever. People do taking a bubble bath, getting a massage, having a smoke, or even vaping, whatever. Here in California, a lot of people smoke a joint to relax. I had a very busy friend in LA once whose life was totally frantic. And I said to him, was like, what do you do to relax? And he said, smoke weed. So, and I'm actually not necessarily criticizing any of those things, but I'm saying that for your average person, a lot of those things would be more relaxing than meditating. That if you actually are honest with yourself. So to meditate in order to relax, if that's your goal or motivation, then you might fall off the wagon pretty quickly from meditation because those other things are genuinely more relaxing to people. And so that's where it's useful to go back to the purpose of meditation, to bring out your best qualities, to deepen your relationships, even to build a better world. If you want to make a better world, you need to build a self, or, the illusion of a self that feels interdependent and interconnected, and secure, confident, in a healthy way. And so it's like exercising, it doesn't always feel great to do your workout, exercise, run, whatever, walk, but you do it because it keeps your body healthy. And so I think that's worth mentioning too, in a kind of funny way, that, meditation isn't relaxing. The other one I like to add, these are all like, four surprising facts about meditation. The last one is that meditation isn't necessarily virtuous, which I think some of you may know. Are any of you familiar with the term spiritual bypass? If you raise your hand. Okay, if not, I like to introduce it. So, and this is something I've found in my own practice too, is that meditation can be just another form of escape. Like you sit on the cushion and you like go to a beautiful place. Like I think all of us can do that. And then we go out and continue to do some sort of harm to ourselves or to the world. In my case, I think about it when I was working at a job that I didn't find like totally ethical. And I really needed to do a lot of practice to kind of get through it. But it would really be just to recharge me so that I would go and then do these things that I didn't totally believe in. So a really good example of this is the military. So the military uses meditation in two different ways, at least two different ways, the US military. One is to overcome PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So they will use mindfulness meditation and other forms of meditation to get over PTSD, which is fantastic. The other is that they will use mindfulness meditation to train a soldier so that they don't shake when they're killing another human being. Seriously, I can send you it's referenced in the book. I looked this up. So I think that's one of the very best examples of meditation being neutral. Like meditation in itself. In fact, when we talk about meditation's definition from a Buddhist perspective, like we said, it's focusing on virtue, concentrating on virtue. So that's something I like to mention. It's just meditation isn't necessarily virtuous. And I like to sum it up in a joke, which is that have any of you seen The Empire Strikes Back, the second Star Wars film? Some people. So well, anyway, I love that. That's my favorite Star Wars film. But in that movie, Darth Vader's when he's not killing people, he's meditating. Like he's meditating through half of that movie. He has this black lotus that he goes into and it closes up and he sits there and meditates to be more and more effectively evil. He has great focus. He has nice, deep, long breaths, you know. So it's a good example how focusing on your breath is not necessarily going to make the world a better place. So that's how I like to end that, is to just say, don't be like Darth Vader, you know. So I think that's a nice way to sum that up. It's like 4 surprising facts about meditation. And they're nice. I think they're nice points too of talking to friends about meditation when they ask you about it. Okay, so now I want to go into the precious life after that introduction to meditation. So this was the very hardest topic to adapt to a secular perspective. I almost tried to skip it actually when I was starting out with the podcast. The podcast was really the first draft for the book. And I actually was thinking of skipping it. I was like, I don't see how you can do this for an ordinary person because it's so dependent on past and future lives. You know, the Buddhist approach to this topic is that we've had infinite past lives as a god, a hell being, animal. Finally, we're human. We're born in a safe place. We encountered the Dharma, all of these things. But we're accumulating all this karma and spending our good karma. And if we don't create the causes for a higher rebirth or enlightenment, then, you know, watch out at the end of life. And by the way, that's the perspective I share, I think, with most of you about precious life. I buy the whole thing. But for an ordinary person, that was the first topic that I was asked to, you know, I was teaching Lam Rim in Buddhist FPMT Buddhist centers for 18 years. And that one did not go over so well with people when we advertised it as, don't need to be Buddhist, come on in, experience meditation. And then in the first sentence, it mentions karma, rebirth, and path, and other realms. So I thought about this a little bit and looked at Thich Nhat Hanh. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh is such an extraordinary teacher. And he comes at this so simply, which is just that 24, each day when I wake up, 24 precious hours. What a gift. How can I make the world a little bit better place through my actions? And so that's the really common sense approach to the precious life. I do think one part of the precious life translates really, really well to ordinary people, which is that when you wake up in the morning and think, I'm so happy I didn't die last night. You know, that's Lama Zopa's approach to it. I say this all the time. It's often one of the first things I say in these public talks about the book, which can kind of freak people out, but it's so true, right? If that's your first thought in the morning, instead of like, oh, I'm so groggy, I need my coffee, why this, why do I need to go to work, or my aches and pains, all legitimate things that aren't good about life. But if you do have that basic of, oh my God, I'm still alive, this is great. So what am I going to do with this day? I think that itself is quite nice. The other really common sense thing I like to share with people, which I think even us, you know, as longtime practitioners still might suffer from, is to ask yourself, what's the first thing you do in the morning? You know, the first thought you have is a really big deal. Like if anyone's a Vajrayana practitioner, you know, we're taught like really, really far out thoughts you have right at the beginning, right when you wake up, to think like, ooh, I'm this deity, or, you know, which is an even more, you know, kind of positive thought to have when you wake up. But for most people today, they reach for their phone, you know, and I've done it. I mean, raise your hand if you've, you know, reached for your phone like right when you wake up in the morning, right? Of course, like we've all done it. And I still do it sometimes, you know, sometimes there's like something really important that has to happen first thing in the morning. But I think when I'm giving these book talks, people often ask, what's the one thing you could recommend for someone starting meditation practice? And that has to be it, like times 1,000, is just do not reach for your phone first thing in the morning. The first thought, the first actions you have in the morning totally determine the way your whole day proceeds. And I think as you get more mindfulness, you can see this, right? You can do the experiment on yourself. I do it on myself. And the days when I started with my phone, even if I then go back to meditation, my mind is much more scattered, fragmented. The winds, the energies in my body are much more agitated. But if I can just leave that phone alone, tablet, any device, and go through a meditation practice, however that long that is for yourself, I think each of our meditation practice tends to get longer and longer as we practice for longer. But say to practice for 15 minutes each morning, which is really connecting with yourself, then the day is so much more meaningful and purposeful, and you have so much more control over your emotions and how you react. So I think that's worth a reminder. And it's such a nightmare. This device is such a nightmare. I mean, it's nice. There's llamas on top, but but even that, it really is a problem, that this is it, because it disconnects us from ourselves. If you reach for the phone first thing in the morning, you're not connecting with yourself. You're connecting with stimulation, entertainment, praise, wealth, checking stocks or whatever, diving straight into work, distraction. It disconnects you from yourself. So people I know who've gone into deep, long, multi-year retreats, they say that's the biggest result that comes out of long retreats is becoming your own best friend. Really, really loving to be with yourself. And so that's just a small way. So that in the teaching on the precious life, I feel like that's actually one of the most important ones for the modern world, is to connect with yourself first thing in the morning before you do anything else. Go. Venerable Renee talks about this all the time. Go to the bathroom, splash a little water on your face, but then come back. And for all of us here, we're into meditation. So do your meditation, however short it is, even if it's just 5 minutes, 15 minutes. I do want to acknowledge that there's other ways that are successful for many people. I know people who are incredible Buddhists who don't meditate first thing in the morning, who don't meditate at all. In fact, a couple of them. Some of these people most of them are really into nature, and their meditation is going out into nature and just feeling connected that way and doing their meditation as they're out there. So I want to acknowledge there's other ways besides meditation. I think most of us on this call are pretty into meditation. Yoga is a great example, exercise. Writing is also quite good. Not with a computer, but if you have a journal and you use a pen, use your body, like that's tantra, right? Is the connection between the body and mind. So writing is one of the clearest connections between body and mind, writing by hand with a pen or a pencil. So just writing one page of text in the morning can be actually a really powerful way to connect with yourself. People who are musicians, I think, are very lucky. I've known I've worked with some very renowned musicians like Bjork and Philip Glass, and those people, like, music seems like their religion, and doing that first thing in the morning can work too. But some way of connecting with yourself first thing in the morning, I think, is one of the most important ways of honoring your precious life. Is like connecting with yourself. How are you going to connect with anyone else if you're not connected to yourself? So what's the first thing you do in the morning? And it doesn't have to be meditation. Like for most of us here, it probably is, but some way of connecting with yourself every single day when you wake up. Now then, when it came to trying to validate this idea of the precious life more from the logical ways, like we do it in Buddhism, there's something I heard when I was in college, and is a quote by Voltaire, great European. And he said this, he said, "It's no more surprising to be born twice than to be born once." So I heard this when I was in college, and I was really quite overwhelmed by it, because it made me realize how much I took for granted this one life. Like we start to kind of muse about whether there's an afterlife, if you're kind of a Judeo-Christian type of origin person, like, is there an afterlife? Is there heaven? Is there hell? If you're Buddhist or Hindu, like, was there a next life? Was there past lives? but it kind of ignores this extraordinary miracle that we have one life, right? It's a really, really amazing. And I think as us, as like Mahayana Buddhists in particular, can kind of discount this one life, because like the first entering the lower scope of the Lam Rim is to be more concerned with the next life than this one. And I think there's a lot of logic to that. But if it leads you to the point of discounting the value of this one, then I think it's a big misunderstanding. Because this is the one we have. And I'm not sure any of us are totally sure that, that what our next life's going to be, if we're going to have a next life. I don't know. I don't know if everyone on this call is 100% convinced. Maybe we're 99 to 98% convinced. I don't know, but who knows if it's really 100% convinced, because we weren't raised in a culture that believed in past and future lives. But the miracle of having one life at all is absolutely extraordinary. And in some ways, I think, because sometimes people say, oh, if you only believe in one life, you easily tend toward nihilism. I don't think so. I think it's quite the opposite. If you only believe you have one life, it's infinitely more precious than thinking you have infinite future ones. And the same causes of happiness are there that His Holiness talks about. If you truly want to be happy, benefit others, that's true for one life and true for infinite lives. It doesn't change. So I just love that. It's no more surprising to be born twice than to be born once. I find it's very, very, every time I hear it, I smile, and it really makes me think. I've thought about it for, 30 plus years. It's really inspired my life a lot. It's a nice way how uncertainty and, healthy skepticism can be very inspiring in life, just to think about that, almost every day, like, wow, it's no more surprising to be born twice than born once. There's another nice European quote for you from Gottfried Leibniz. And I love this quote. He said, "Why is there something rather than nothing?" And so that's even more than appreciating that we have one life, that there's anything at all is really quite astonishing, right? Like a lot of Robert Thurman talks about this a lot, how in the Western world now, let's call it the modern world actually, because it's not just the West. In the modern world now, you can take for granted existence, and then just start to kind of probe the boundaries of it, like, well, is there dark matter or dark energy or something like that? But the most extraordinary miracle of all is just that there's something. There's no evidence for nothing, is what Robert Thurman says. The definition of nothing is that it doesn't exist, right? Nothing means it doesn't exist. So you can't turn into nothing, right? And that's what a lot of people believe, is like when you die, you turn into nothing. But the definition of nothing is that it doesn't exist. So without a doubt, you can't turn into nothing. Maybe maybe for sure some people, they believe, there's only a material continuity. So your body turns into, other things after you die. But still, there is no non-existence. It's just not, there's no evidence for it because it doesn't exist. Its definition, it's a self-negating term. It means it doesn't exist. And I really like to emphasize that, because there is a lot of nihilism in our society right now, in global society. But when you look around, all there is something. Like everywhere you look, there's something. Your body is something. This room is something. Your room, look out the window here. It's a beautiful sunny day. And then everything we know about the universe, our solar system, the galaxy, other galaxies. It's really extraordinary. That's another quote that just never fails to make me feel awe, a profound sense of awe, that doesn't rely on anything that we would consider supernatural. Why is there something rather than nothing? Just to have that extraordinary, like, not to probe past what we already know, but just to have that extraordinary sense of awe. I still really can't quite get my head around it. Like whenever I think about it, it just gives me that tingling sense of infinity. Like, wow, all there is something, And for all we know, it's always existed. Like, what's up with that? Where did it came from? Where did it come from? It's always been there. Like the extraordinary miracle of existence. There will never be an answer to that, I don't think. We can get more and more answers as to how, like how the universe exists, what its details are, but why? Why is there anything? Why is there anything in the universe? Anyway, hopefully you feel that kind of tingling feeling inside yourself that I do. And I find it more powerful than thinking, about many, many future lives or anything like that. Just the power of now, like some people say. And then within that, this topic of the precious life, then I like to think back a little bit to what we all know from science. Did anybody watch Cosmos? There are two Cosmos. There was the Carl Sagan Cosmos from the 80s, which I don't know, did anyone else see that when I was a kid? I saw that. And it was very great. And then there was a new one with Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's also great BBC specials, on the same thing. I'm sure other, European shows. But that really blew my mind when I was, 10 years old and saw that television show. And he had this thing called the cosmic calendar, where they try to condense all of the 14 billion years of the universe into a calendar year, so you can kind of get a sense of how brief our humanity has existed. And so what you see is that all of our modern history fits into like the last second of the cosmic calendar. That everything we know about, I think the last 500 years or so, it's just like, boom, just like a snap of the fingers. Humanity's existed for 200,000 years, so about 10,000 generations. And then before that, millions of years of like hominins, different types of, two-legged similar creatures. I heard something really amazing recently, which is that, all the nice fruits and vegetables we have, everything from like wheat to bananas, apples, that it actually took 4,000 to 5,000 years for those to evolve. The original forms of all those fruits and vegetables are totally unrecognizable to what we have today. There would be like little nubbins, like an apple or a plum was just like this tiny little sour, hard berry about 15,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. And it was from human beings through each season, taking the ones that tasted slightly better and were slightly juicier, and then planting those. This is before even agriculture, and that it took 4,000 or 5,000 years to create those really delicious fruits and vegetables that we all enjoy now. Really nutritious, rich in nutrition and energy, in particular wheat and other grains. And that the people who did that, in many cases, didn't even see any change over the course of their life. They were making changes that were almost they couldn't be indiscernible over the course of a human lifetime. And yet we have, for how many generations, over 4,000 years, that's, I don't know, hundreds of generations of people we have to thank for everything in our refrigerator, in our cupboard. So I think about that one a lot when thinking about the precious life of those 4,000 or 5,000 years of humanity that just made the vegetables and fruits possible that we enjoy today. But then you can go back, to all of evolution. It's about 3.8 billion years of evolution on Earth that leads up to our precious lives. I was talking before about all of the heavy elements came from stars that exploded before ours was born. Everything in our body, everything on Earth were earlier stellar explosions. Then all the way back to the Big Bang, So when you do I think all of us probably do some kind of a blessing with our food every day before we eat it, like Oma, Oma. We just do that Oma, 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 in our family. But I try to think back to all the causes, all the people, but it goes all the way back to the Big Bang. There's it's total continuity to yourself eating this fruit. Sometimes I feel bad. It's like, ooh, it's the end of the line for this apple. It It took 3.8 billion years, and now I'm eating you. And that's it for your line. But it's not really it for the apple, because then it becomes part of you, and then you become part of something else later. So this is how we could go on and on. This is when I do this meditation for a long time myself or in a retreat, this is the line of thinking that I go through in this secular, secular non-Buddhist way. And I do find it really quite inspiring. And in some ways it feels rarer, like what if humanity is only, it's 200,000 years out of 4 billion years of the whole universe. What's our responsibility to the universe as maybe the only thing that can reflect the universe to itself, that can understand it? Carl Sagan said, we are a way for the universe to know itself. It's like we are the universe's mind. Humanity is the universe's mind. And Buddhism says, there's many other planets, there's many others. Like now, instead of continents, like Gyumen Khenso Rinpoche, when he talks, he says planets, which I really like because it maps more to the way we understand the universe today. And so the Buddhist view would be that there's lots and lots of life throughout the whole universe, just teeming with life. But we don't have any evidence for that yet. So our life seems more precious, I think, given the scientific worldview. If maybe we're the only intelligent life in the universe, even more responsibility to make the most of our life. Anyway, so that's just a little bit about this secular approach to the precious life, which I think in some ways adds something, because you can always add those things on top of your current Buddhist approach to precious life, but especially those cosmic ones, I feel, because I don't feel like I have evidence that there's other, it's like Star Trek, like, humans on every planet hanging out. I'm not convinced, that's the case. Life might be very, very, very rare in the universe. It's actually there's this Fermi's paradox, as to why we haven't heard from other civilizations, because it should only take 100 million years to populate the whole galaxy, like for somehow to send robot probes or, some kind of starships. So why don't we have any signals? Why don't we have any probes that we've seen? Maybe that life is very, very rare. So if so, how do you want to live today? And what do you want to do with your life? So I think it's nice now to go into a little meditation, and then I think we'd still have a little time for still have a little bit of time for questions afterwards. So do we want a little break before we go to the meditation? Yeah. Yeah. Why don't we take just 5 minutes or something, and then we'll do the meditation, and then I think we'll still have time for questions afterward. And we'll end after like an hour and a half. I think that's the normal time of your classes. So unless people have a ton of questions. Okay, well, I'll be right back. I'll be right back then. 5 minutes.
Yes, excellent. Great.
Okay. I'm early back.
Yes.
Hmm.
I sort of had a flashback to B. Alan Wallace as well, talking about cosmos and universe and science.
Yeah.
So, but that's a good comparison.
It's pretty amazing when you learn about, I mean, my daughter's 13, so I've introduced her to a lot of these ideas, and it's really amazing when you first hear about it, it's really extraordinary. But now we don't even know, science is still with this new Webb telescope, um, they're starting to see like some discrepancies in the like expansion of early galaxies, so that if that's the case, then we're wrong about the age of the universe and all kinds of, and even that the universe might be infinite rather than finite. So there's still a lot to know. It's a lot to know. It's a lot to learn. Okay. I think is that was that 5 minutes? I didn't check the time. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Let's meditate on the precious life. Okay, so settle yourself into meditation posture. We're going to meditate on the precious life, which in this form, in this form that is, it doesn't presuppose any of the Buddhist worldview, but it's meant to give you the same experience of cultivating awe in the face of the universe's magnitude, the shortness of our lives, and the opportunity that we find in every day. Create some motivation for your meditation. It's really the most important part of a meditation. What turns it into meditation, from the Buddhist definition of meditation of bringing out your best qualities is to have a motivation to bring out our best qualities so that we can be a great partner, friend, boss, employee, teacher, student, whatever we are in life. Be there to show up for others, to create the causes of happiness for ourselves and others, and to be however small a part of making the world a better place. And then it's nice to have some sense of refuge too. Most of us are Buddhists, so we likely feel a sense of refuge in the extraordinary teachers we've met in this life. That's the only way we learn the Dharma, a direct path to the Buddha and his teachings. But also refuge in anyone else in your life who embodies and acts according to these principles of kindness, generosity, compassion, love, wanting others to be happy. When I think in my life of these people, some people in my life I've known 30, 40 years more. They've never said a bad thing about someone else. They're always thinking about someone else. And many of them aren't spiritual at all. My brother's wife is one of these people, totally selfless, generous. My realtor, my real estate agent is like this. I'm always kind, always thinking of others. I was just in a call with her today with her book club. So think about that. Whatever helps you to have a sense of refuge, from your spiritual teachers to the kind, loving people around you. Then recall that those ways of being are trainable. that it took effort for those people to cultivate those qualities, to hold back the urges to harm. And that by doing that day by day, they increase that groove, strengthen that groove of positive, constructive mental habits and decrease the grooves of negative, destructive mental habits. And so it's just an easy way, one way of saying we can become like them. That's what our spiritual teachers say, is that by practicing just the way we are right now, we're becoming more like them. We're bringing out our best qualities and letting delusions just evaporate, fade away. And then let's focus on the breath, do a little bit of stabilizing meditation. Just for a minute, very briefly. Bring your mind to your breath, either at your nostrils or with the rise and fall of your abdomen. It's quite natural to become distracted. And so treat those distractions with gentleness, even a welcoming that thoughts, feelings, sensations naturally arise, but they also naturally disappear on their own. And if you just leave them alone, they'll fade away. You can gently steer your mind back to your breath. So try that, not trying to push away any distractions, but also not pulling any of them close. Just letting your mind proceed naturally and putting a little bit of effort to steering your attention to your breath and just letting everything else pass by. So just for 1 minute, focus on the breath. A lot of people on this call, it's the night. But even so, for this meditation, try to imagine that it's the morning and that you've just woken up. And in your mind, practice picturing yourself just waking up and think, I'm so grateful to have another day alive, to have this body, a safe place to sleep, a modest amount of comfort and security, family, friends. Maybe I have everything I need to be happy. And there's nothing better I could be doing with these first few minutes of my day than going inward to understand who I am beneath stimulation, stress, entertainment, thoughts. Getting to know the deep core of my awareness, to explore the mystery of being alive and aware right now. So in meditating on the precious life, we reflect on our good fortune. But of course, each of us faces many hardships. Yet for a moment, let's try and practice gratitude for whatever we have, for simply being alive and aware, feeling grateful for our body and its senses. That's the way that we appreciate the beauty of the world. Feeling grateful for whatever resources we have, food, shelter, safety, security, health, education, a job, friends, family. Many people don't have these things, and we're fortunate to have some or all of them. Then feel gratitude that we've found an interest to go, at least sometimes, beyond striving, beyond competitiveness, beyond entertainment. There's a place for all these things in life, but there's also something more. We feel grateful that such thoughts have arisen in our minds, that we've been exposed to ideas and teachers and friends who value inner happiness, who contemplate the worth of an existence that can rise above material accumulation. Then we can feel grateful that we're not only curious and interested in finding the deepest sources of life's meaning, but that we've each made an effort to pursue self-awareness, to read books, listen to teachers, and to actually go on an inner adventure through meditation. Honestly probe what's inside our minds, and discover how to be happy, how to be of genuine benefit to others. Then feel grateful that we have the basics of life that many can't take for granted. People in poverty, people in wars, people in extreme climates, people suffering political, racial, gender oppression, or people afflicted by unquenchable addictions for food, sex, drugs, power, fame, or wealth. maybe we have everything we need to be happy. And we only need to make the effort to live this day aware of our precious life, remembering everything that we're grateful for. Now we contemplate our connection to the universe. We're sitting in the center of a universe 13.8 billion years old, with 100 billion galaxies. There are 100 billion stars in our own galaxy, the Milky Way. 100 million of those with planets like ours, circling their own burning star. One of them is our own sun, 4 billion years old, where life on its third planet, Earth, has existed for 3 billion years. Over that time, the scientific magic of evolution transformed simple chemicals into cells, worms, fish, snakes, dinosaurs, mammals, and monkeys. And then humanity arrives at the tip of history only 200,000 years ago. 10,000 generations of humans pass by, so many of them struggling, dying at birth, hungry, violent, afraid. And then you are born. Now, despite its drawbacks and discomforts and injustices, we're lucky enough to live in a world that is safer and more abundant for humans than it's ever been before. There's no evidence yet for any other life in the universe. What if humanity is the pinnacle of the entire universe's evolution? What if we are the universe's sole way of knowing itself? If that's the case, what's a good way to spend today? What's the best way to prepare our minds to be happy, to live with dignity and meaning and connection? It might be nothing more than what we're doing right now, going inward, probing our minds, cultivating the true causes of happiness in the present moment through gratitude and self-awareness. And then going out into the world to make deep connections with others and make our fragile, beautiful world a little bit better for everyone else who shares it. So rest in these thoughts for a minute, your profound connection to all the universe and all of history, your gratefulness for being alive. How do we make the most of this day? And then as we start to come out of the meditation, we can set an intention to being genuinely present and aware for the rest of the day, to not take things personally, to see that there's truth and meaning to be gained from even painful moments of conflict, that it's possible to stay aware and present without mindlessly reacting, to consider our response, to see the heartfelt needs, even an underlying tenderness beneath our own and everyone else's actions, however imperfect. We can go into the day with an intention to be present and aware. And maybe this is all we need to be happy. And then we can come out of the meditation. And I have like 10 minutes for questions.
So you will raise your hand or just ask away. Otherwise, I could get started with a basic question about meditation. There's this tendency that meditation is also used as a like how to develop and your like a coping strategy for you to in your work life balance and be more effective, more successful, more everything, so you can cope with a stressful society. But on the other hand, it's also good to have a coping strategy because
Yeah.
life is stressful. So where do we land on this one, in your opinion?
I mean, it just depends how courageous you are. Like, it is very, very courageous to be a Buddhist. And the way, for those of us who are, practicing Buddhists, and a Mahayana Buddhist, it's such an extraordinarily, like, courageously brave and honest approach to life. And I've always kind of thought it's so interesting, the asymmetry of the Buddhist approach to your own behavior versus other behavior. Because on one side, we look at others and it's just like you completely understand that there's almost no way they could do anything else. It's just cause and effect. You know, what are you going to do? It's from Vladimir Putin to everyone else. Like, there's causes and conditions that the way they were raised, the way their mind was conditioned. So you have this extraordinary compassion for everyone, even like people doing the worst things in the world. And then we're quite critical of ourselves as Buddhists, we look for ourselves, like each of us is doing much better job than Vladimir Putin. For sure. For sure. Our lives are like infinitely better than what Vladimir Putin is doing to the world right now. And yet, as a Buddhist, we're quite critical of ourselves. And we're like, oh, how can I improve? Like, what are those to lose? Because we can see inside our own mind, like, oh, that thought is not too helpful. I like to steer away from that. But then to still love yourself. So how do you strike that balance of totally loving yourself and accepting yourself, and then being analytical and critical about the things you want to change, without judging yourself to be a bad person, just like, oh, I'd rather change that. And, oh, that thing I'd like to cultivate. So I think it's quite a balancing act, um, the Buddhist way of life. And I like Tara Brach's approach. I think Tara Brach is really good, where her approaches start with radical self-acceptance. Like, the foundation is just to accept yourself exactly where you are, um, which really is quite radical. Because if you can't, and like the more you think about it, again, it's such a deep thing. What does it mean to accept yourself? Like, it's not complacency. It's actually just like, this is who I am right now. this is who I am. These are the things I do. These are the things I'm a little bit disappointed in my behavior. These are the things I'm really proud of. These are the places that things that are improving. These are some areas that are sliding back. Without feeling bad about yourself. That's a radical self-acceptance. Just accept everything about yourself, even as you, gently steer yourself. So to answer your question, it's like it's an individual question, right? Like it doesn't mean you have to walk out on everything like this instant or something, like if you think your job is harmful or whatever, but just to find the right path for yourself. Like what is the, using your own, if only there were a single answer for everyone, it'd be easy. But it's often the different, two people in the exact same situation might have a completely different answer as to what they should be doing. Like one of them should quit immediately and do something else. Maybe the other one should stay there for 10 years and try to change things within and, whatever, or use that money to support something else. So you really have to cultivate your own wisdom. And I also don't recommend giving up that power too. I think something I see in our tradition is a lot of people asking their teachers too many questions. Like, should I get divorced? Should I take this job? Should I quit this job? Like, I think the appropriate questions for our spiritual teachers are the spiritual questions. And I kind of learned this from asking Geshe Dakpa all those questions, like, should I do this? Should I get divorced? You know what he said every time I asked him what I should do in a worldly situation? Always the same answer. He said, it doesn't matter. Every time I asked him about anything worldly. But he'd give lots of advice about spiritual matters. So I think it's really up to us to get that insight as to what we need to do in our own individual lives, and to be gentle on ourselves and honest with ourselves, patient, and like make the changes when you want to. So I think that's the way to avoid the spiritual bypass, is just the total honesty without judgment and criticism. And then give yourself the time to figure out like what's the right thing to do. One of my favorite quotes is from Stuart Brandt, one of my heroes, who's not necessarily a Buddhist, but he said, good things happen slowly, bad things happen fast. I really love that. So give yourself the time to make good things happen. And then all of a sudden it's like the time, you see, it's very interesting. Like this is what, kind of makes me believe in karma. It's very strange. I always say things are either impossible or effortless, it's a bit of an extreme thing to say, but it's very strange. You want something to happen so much, sometimes for decades. And then all of a sudden the conditions come together and there it is. So I think there's something to that, to watching the conditions in your life. You're not separate from the world and people around you. So watching the conditions and kind of I feel like your life is telling you what to do if you just listen to it. Like it's not inside your head. You're totally interconnected with reality. And when your sense of self gets bigger, you just kind of listen to everything around you and you're like, okay, it's time to do this thing, time to quit, time to start this, time to stop that. I don't know. Hopefully that's useful. It's a kind of a big, broad answer, but hopefully useful. Yeah.
Maybe you have some insight as to decide meditating on
Can't really hear you, Cyril. Can't really hear you very well.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Beside meditating on bodhicitta, do you have any kind of like insight as to how to reconcile on one hand, meditation, you know that your meditation is successful because your relationship improve.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, you become your best friend and you need really less and less relationships.
Yeah.
And you as a father, as a Dharma teacher and as someone who has these relationship in the many relationship in the real world, how do you really reconcile, I guess, on one hand, you need them less and less to be happy. And on the other hand, obviously you become better having relationship. My only answer is meditating on bodhicitta, but I thought maybe you have something else to provide some clues.
Yeah, well, it's about non-attachment, and one path to that will be the next topic. That's what they say. If you do the Lamrim right, it naturally leads to the question about the next topic. So it's nice. I mean, it's naturally leading to the next topic of impermanence, right? Because if you start to realize impermanence, then you're not like a junkie anymore. You don't have this exaggerated illusion that a certain food, a drug, a relationship, that's gonna make you happy forever. Like, of course, it's impermanent, it's transitory. Um, but I think you become happy with whatever. This is what Renee says, and I find it to be true. Like, you're happy when you're alone. You're happy with others. You're happy when good things happen. And actually, you're also happy when bad things happen because you're like, wow, this is my chance to now I can apply some of these things I've been preparing for. Like, this is, like when you have a tool, like if you're into construction or something, you have like all this stuff. Like I have actually, I'm going to do some projects the next week. Like you have these saws and drills and things down in your basement, So then you're quite happy when something breaks. You're like, oh, great, now I have a chance. Now I can use my saw and my right. And I think it's the same thing. Like once, because everyone's like, why would you be happy when you have problems? It doesn't actually really make sense. It's not nice to have problems, but it feels good when you realize problems are inevitably going to occur. That's impermanence, samsara, as you'd say, as a Buddhist too. But now I have all this room full of tools, and now I finally get to use them. I've been studying, practicing, imagining. Now I actually get to use it, right? So I find that that's why that's how I personally feel good about. I don't feel like, oh, it's great to get cancer or something. I don't have cancer. But when a problem occurs, you're like, now it's my I've learned all these things, and now instead of just sitting there idle, now I get to use them, and it'll be a benefit to the people around me too, either from my own example of how to live a life of equanimity. That's one of the very best ways that your practice is beneficial. People look at you like, wow, how does a guy do that? Or through actually, directly helping people with your anything from a smile to very big ways that you help others. So it's easy to like wave your hands and say bodhicitta. What does it mean exactly? But yeah, to get concrete into we have these tools, we get a chance to use them. Why are problems good? Because they give us a chance to use all these tools we keep practicing in theory. You see it with like EMTs and people. I knew a guy who was an architect, and he actually moved his architecture practice to half time because he wasn't satisfied with that work that he didn't feel like he was benefiting people enough. And he became an EMT, a person who goes in an ambulance when people are hurt, right? And he loves it. He loves that so much more than doing architecture. And all he does is he drive around to people who have been like shot, mutilated in a fire, like right? Like people at the worst moment of their life. And his life is so much more satisfying now because he feels like he's really of direct benefit to people, like so obviously of benefit. Anyway, I think I could go on. We could all go on, but I think that gives you like a flavor, right? Is these tools become useful, and that's how you're happy throughout all the different circumstances of your life. But it starts to not matter as much. I'm not saying I'm at that point, by the way, but I see it, in some of my teachers, and sometimes in myself. Like it starts to not matter as much what happens in your life. You're like, oh, everything's an opportunity, like one way or another. And but there's different types of happiness. Like it's nice to really enjoy pleasant things, from ice cream to making love with your partner. Like you can genuinely enjoy those much better when you're not like a junkie thinking you have to have them to make you satisfied. But if they do sort of fall across your path in life, then enjoy them and share them and feel good about it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Hmm. Yeah. Well, if not, it's the right time. That is a good duration for a class. Well, that's fun. I always love talking about this stuff. You know, the idea, like Ben Robina says, is that these things, the Dharma is tasty. I really, really feel that so strongly. Like I never get tired of thinking and talking about these things. So I really appreciate all the time with all of you to talk about them, and I looking forward to our next 3 sessions over the next couple months.
And that's where I have to tell you that, sorry, I said 14 days. It's actually next Thursday,
Yeah.
June 6th, and it will be on embracing impermanence. So excuse me for that. And also I wanted to say tasty with that will be my teacher. I think this book is very tasty because it's sort of like it's introduction to bigger issues, bigger topics, instead of just sucking you into Buddhism right away, just giving you the first doorstep into a new way of thinking. So absolutely fantastic. Scott, thank you for joining us tonight and helping us widen our perspective. And thank you to everybody joining in. And you mentioned also some sort of community, a new one. Maybe you could just say a few
Oh,
words.
right. Yeah, so this is something because I taught a couple versions of a 12-week class on these topics, like with uh, online last year. And now we've decided to put that into a community, so it's just continuous. So every Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is like kind of early evening in Europe on Sundays, we meet. The community is called Train a Happy Mind. So it's at trainahappymind.org, and it's part of the Skeptic's Path, you know, the nonprofit that I run. And so anybody who wants to join that, it's by donation. You can do it for free or you can make a donation. And then you also get access to the class and things like that, forums. So yeah, if anyone wants to start, you know, building that kind of secular sangha to help ourselves and help others, yeah. Or if you just enjoy, you know, these type of meditations, I'm just going to go continuously in general through the Lam Rim in a more, you know, secular approach to keep deepening that groove, you know, year after year. So join me if you like.
Thank you very much, really from the bottom of my heart, Scott. And thank you everybody for joining in. Hope to see you next Thursday as well. I know for a fact that a lot of people would watch the videos once it's published on YouTube. So that's also a new way of getting to be in touch with your teachers and the teachings. So thank you, everybody.
Thank
And
you.